Very good morning to you and welcome to our thought for the day for Friday the 27th of November. Our reading today is from Isaiah chapter 42, beginning at verse 1, and this is what it says. Here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. He will not shout out or cry out or raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smouldering wick he will not snuff out. In faithfulness he will bring forth justice. He will not falter or be discouraged till he establishes justice on earth. In his teaching the islands will put their hope. This is what God, the Lord says. The creator of the heavens, who stretches them out, who spreads out the earth with all that springs from it, who gives breath to its people and life to those who walk on it. I, the Lord, have called you in righteousness. I will take hold of your hand. I will keep you and will make you to be a covenant for the people and a light for the Gentiles, to open eyes that are blind, to free captives from prison, and to release from the dungeon those who sit in darkness. I am the Lord, that is my name. I will not yield my glory to another, or my praise to idols. See, the former things have taken place, and new things I declare. Before they spring into being, I announce them to you. A magnificent passage in Isaiah, and the key to understanding it is to work out who the servant is. Now in Isaiah the word servant is used to describe a number of people, notably Isaiah himself. It's used to describe Nebuchadnezzar or Cyrus as servants of God, in other words people through whom God achieves his purposes and plans. And here in this part of Isaiah it's used to describe the servant of God, that is the people, Jacob, Israel, the people of God, this nation that was called out from all the other nations to bring people to him. A nation that would point towards him by the way that they lived their lives, by the values that they held, by their worship of the one God, Yahweh. But of course, this people, as Isaiah writes, are in exile in Babylon, and they appear not to be fulfilling their ministry, their calling. But God hasn't given up on his plan of redemption for all of creation. He has chosen a servant. And whereas before Isaiah, when he uses the word servant, is often pointing to Jacob, Israel, here is a servant who has come from Jacob, Israel. The prophecies have always been right. Out of you, my people, out of Jacob, Israel, will come one who is the true servant, who fulfills his mission, his calling. And here we have a description of what he's like. And so it says, I will put my spirit on him. That's so important. And of course it echoes of Jesus' life. The first act of his ministry begins with his baptism. What's the first thing that happens with his baptism? The Spirit of God comes upon him. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. In other words, this is not merely a servant who is going to serve the people of God. He's the servant king who's going to come for all, for everyone, for every inhabitant on earth. He will not shout or cry out or raise his voice in the streets. That's not really about whether he's going to be a noisy preacher, shouting things out on the street corner. The crying out here is about crying out in suffering. And of course, God's people are in exile. They've been crying out in their suffering. But this servant is going to be like them. He's not going to be crying out in his suffering. He's a servant who is going to embrace his suffering willingly. He's going to submit to the will of God, and ultimately, in a strange way, and this is worth much meditation, to the will of men, as he suffers and is ultimately crucified, as he follows God's mission. A bruised reed he will not break, a smouldering wick he will not snuff out. I mean, how wonderful. Usually when I think of sort of movies with heroes and so on, they're swashbuckling and they kind of trample all over the enemy armies. And on the one hand, we have a God who is like that, who's powerful and mighty, who says, look, I'm the creator of the heavens, who stretches them out, who spreads out the earth of all that springs from it, who gives breath to its people, life to those who walk on it. This is a mighty God we worship, and yet his servant is one who will be so gentle to those who are most vulnerable, whose ministry is marked with compassion and kindness. In faithfulness he brings forth justice. He will not falter or be discouraged. This servant will see things through to the very end, till he establishes justice on earth. Until, and again, as I've said before, but we must keep repeating that to ourselves, justice in the Bible is all about making things right. Once and for all, everything being made fair, everything being restored, everything being made right. And this servant's ministry will not cease until that is so. In his teaching, the islands will put their hope. Even the people who live the furthest away. This is a man who serves God not merely for the people of God, who isn't there just to save the people of God themselves, Jacob, Israel, but who will save the whole earth. What a glorious picture, a glorious vision of our Messiah, Jesus Christ. The passage ends with these words, "See, the former things have taken place, and new things I declare. Before they spring into being, I announce them to you." When Isaiah wrote these words, I don't know how fully Isaiah would have understood quite what he was writing, quite how God would deliver not only his own people, but all the earth. But he must have so longed to see this Messiah. And today I'm reminded that we are very fortunate. We know who the Messiah is. We know who this servant king is, Jesus Christ. So be encouraged today that we follow the most wonderful God, and we too are called to be servants, like our King's servant, to be just like him, and to bring all that he's bringing about right now, today, in our own lives, with all those that we meet. Hope you have a great day. See you again next time. Bye bye.